2 months ago, I watched the entire filmography of one of my favorite actors, Andrew Garfield. Now with the release of one of her biggest movies ever, it's time for one of my favorite actresses, Margot Robbie. I'm talking 25 movies today. I'm ranking all of them best to worst, as well as ranking all 25 performances. One of her best performances is in a decent movie, and one of the best movies is like ranked in the middle. That's enough talk, let's get into it and throw things back to 2008 with her debut film, Vigilante.
Okay. I've finished my dessert. Where's the rest of my present?
There's not much to say about this movie outside of the fact it's actually pretty hard to find, and there's a good reason for that. The film's not good. That's the gist of it. The IMDb summary of the plot reads, when Luke is viciously attacked and his fiancée is R-word and M-worded, he pledges to train himself in deadly hand-to-hand combat and use it against any wrongdoers who dare cross his path. Margot Robbie plays his fiancée, and I can't even tell you if she's good in this movie or not because she has like 10 lines and then gets killed in like the first 10 minutes. And when she does speak, the sound mixing is so not quality, I can't even hear what she's saying.
I don't even know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying.
At first, you might think it's gonna be a funny bad movie you can laugh at, but it's not. There's no reason to watch this. Just putting it bluntly. Still, I respect the filmmakers for making a movie because I imagine making a movie is hard. Hey, and there's a good chance Margot Robbie gets her worst movie out of the way first, so it's only up from here.
They might not have talked much at home, but they're certainly making up for it now.
Well, it turns out it's hardly up from there. ICU is from the same team as Vigilante, and while it's better, it's still not that good. I can give some compliments though. Margot Robbie is in the whole movie this time, and she does a solid job with what she's given. The film plays to its budget a lot better this time, and the story is a lot more focused, which makes it actually feel like a movie, which I can't say the same about Vigilante. In fact, the idea itself is actually pretty solid. The film follows siblings Troy and Tristan and a friend Ricky, who accidentally stumble upon a creepy neighbor who seems to be killing people. The film has some goofy dialogue and a lot of questionable moments that actually makes it sometimes fun to watch. But alas, it's ruined by one friend just perving out on Margot Robbie's character. Just a lot of uncomfortable sequences with that take it from like funny, silly to just uncomfortable. Still, like I said in Vigilante, props to the people that made the movie. And after this one, Margot Robbie would say, okay, that's a good warm-up. Let's get down to business.
Oh, no, wait. It's not going to be about love, is it?
The next two movies kind of feel like an apology for making me watch the last two. And in all honesty, I thought About Time was just gonna be like a bridge movie connecting the first She's Not Famous movies to The Wolf of Wall Street, but About Time freaking rules. The film follows Tim, who learns the men in his family can time travel, so he decides to use that power to get himself a girlfriend. While Rachel McAdams is the main love interest here, the first girl that catches Tim's eyes is Charlotte, played by Margot Robbie. She's not in the film a ton, but it's crazy to see her in this, contrasted to the last films. It almost doesn't feel like the same person. She's not bad in those first two movies, but this one you can tell something is different. You can see the signs of her talent, and that talent, trust me, only skyrockets from here. I'm not a huge rom-com guy, but this one was great. It's pretty lighthearted, it's touching, and has legit one of the best endings to a movie I've seen in a long time. There is a good chance this is in the top 5, top 10 movies of her filmography.
We're not gonna be friends.
This is the movie where Margot Robbie decides, I'm no longer fucking around. It's the movie most people discovered her from, and while her introduction might paint her to just be Jordan's beautiful wife, Robbie's performance is awesome in this movie. The film follows the rise and fall of the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. Margot Robbie playing the role of Jordan's second wife, Naomi. If the jump from ICU to About Time was like a big bound, this is a freaking cannon launch because Robbie is so good in this movie. It's crazy to think her fourth movie, she's going toe-to-toe with DiCaprio in a Martin Scorsese film. In a film full of interesting characters, Naomi is another great one, and her relationship with Jordan is one of the film's best. We see Naomi in so many lights, and she's a great example of how Jordan's lifestyle affects those around him. She's a super interesting character, and I really like those interviews of Margot Robbie talking about it. Awesome movie too, by the way.
I don't care where he was born. They're human, just like us. And they didn't throw my family out of their home.
So you're thinking, wow, Margot Robbie is a big actress now. Well, actually no. This is a strange movie in Robbie's filmography because I'm pretty sure it was filmed before Wolf of Wall Street was released. So she takes a backseat in this one and is only really a side character who pops up here and there. What's the movie about though? Good question, love. Well, kinda. Set in World War II, a French village is forced to house German soldiers once they're defeated, and we get a little Romeo and Juliet forbidden love between a French woman and a German soldier living with them. It was actually a solid movie outside of the fact I'm not sure if the movie wants me to like this Nazi or not. Margot Robbie is in so little of this movie, if I knew in advance, I might have actually skipped it. She has like 4 or 5 lines, it feels like. It was a very important movie for her though, because she'd end up marrying the film's third assistant director, Tom Ackerley. Good for them, let's move on.
Would you like to take a walk?
Every actor needs one, ladies and gentlemen. It's apocalypse time. The film follows a woman named Anne who gets roped into a good old-fashioned love triangle with 2 big dog actors in Chiwetel Ejiofor and Chris Pine. It takes more of a Last of Us approach with its apocalypse. It's quiet, very character-driven, and honestly, I like this one too. It's nothing fancy, no big monsters. Really, their only concern aside from basic needs is radiation, but that's not even like a huge thing in the story. Jealousy, trust, these are the main driving forces of tension, and the movie works because the actors all do a really solid job. I like rooting for them and watching them get these tiny apocalypse wins that feel massive, and towards the end you really start to feel that tension boil over for these people stuck together. It's a quiet role for Robbie too. I think every actor needs a performance that's quiet because subtle acting can be some of the hardest to do, and I think she does a good job of conveying Anne's emotions without being loud and theatrical. Good stuff, solid movie.
But at the end of the day, this is a game of focus.
This seems to be Margot Robbie's big return to big budget films after Wall Street, starring alongside Will Smith in the crime flick Focus. I actually remember when this movie came out and thinking like, oh wow, that looks pretty alright. And was I right? The first half of this movie is really cool. It's Will Smith teaching Margot Robbie the ropes of how to con people, and the chemistry they have is great. It makes the 2 characters incredibly likable, and that's by far the best part of the movie. There are some really cool scenes sprinkled throughout the first half, but unfortunately, the second half gets a little lost in the sauce. This is kind of the point though I think everyone started to realize Margot Robbie could be a box office draw. Throw her name real big on the poster, she's here to stay, so we get hyped. The film allows Robbie to be serious, have a few funny moments, and in general, as the film's ending was, I think she's good here too. Decent movie, fun, heist-like movie.
His soundbite about not loading his rifle. They sent him to Helmand. And he got his legs blown off.
This is an interesting movie. It's described as a comedy war drama, and as a whole, I think the fact it doesn't ever commit to either ends up hurting it in the long run. The film follows Kim Baker, a journalist who moves to Afghanistan for work, and the many adventures she encounters in the process. Margot Robbie has a smaller-ish type role in this one, playing another journalist who jumps around from friend to adversary, but I was a little surprised she wasn't in the movie more. I'm not saying she has to play the lead in every movie going forward, it's just curious they'd cast this huge emerging star as a role that only pops up every once in a while. Anyway, she's good in the movie for what her role asks of her, but she's not even there that much. What the heck? Rest of the movie was kind of just fine though. Feels kind of like a collection of scenes kind of thing, you know? Moving on. Personally, I didn't really like this one that much. It's a new adaptation of Tarzan, and the cast is good. That's a huge upside. Margot Robbie, Alexander Skarsgård, Samuel L. Jackson, Christoph Waltz, what the hell? That's a crazy lineup. And the best part of the movie. Really, the only reason to watch this movie. Tarzan's retired. I'm getting too old for this shit. But it's time to go back to Africa, because Christoph Waltz, he's got a rosary, and he thinks he's Bruce Lee or something. Margot Robbie plays Jane in this one, Tarzan's wife, and it's a bit of a bummer, because she kind of just gets relegated to someone for Tarzan to save. And while again the performance is cool, I can't say I'm a huge fan of how the film uses this character. Maybe because I know now in 2023 how good Margot Robbie is, but I don't think people in 2016 quite knew yet. Maybe they didn't pay attention in Wolf of Wall Street. Maybe it's because I feel like that's 2 movies in a row she was completely wasted in, but looking at the films ahead, luckily I think the world would find out real quick just how good she is. This movie though, no thanks.
Goody. Something tells me a whole lot of people are about to die.
While at this point we established the world didn't really know how talented Margot Robbie just was yet, one of the huge upsides of this movie was how it brought our favorite Aussie into the mainstream, making her instantly a lot more known among the average people. When this movie came out, a lot of people were still really hyped for the DCEU. And with the debut of Harley Quinn and Joker, this movie was going to be awesome. Well, at least Harley Quinn was good. People walking out of this movie and going, Margot Robbie was really good. That's like a canon event. And she's good in the movie. Really good, actually. It's one of the biggest change-ups in her career so far, Harley being a very different character from anyone else she's portrayed up until this point. Rewatching the movie too, it's just kind of like boring, to be honest. The first half is just exposition, and since Enchantress kind of is a stinker of a villain, it's up to Harley and Deadshot to try and entertain people, and they give their best attempt, but even a reunion of that focused dynamic duo, it can't really save this movie.
I'm trying to do the best with what I know how to,
Miss
and
Harding.
you're giving me, it's like you're giving me a life sentence if you do that. You can't do that.
Finally! This is the movie I think made the world see Margot Robbie. She ain't playing around. This movie, she gives a absolutely phenomenal performance that 1000% deserves the Oscar nomination it landed her. Robbie plays Tonya Harding, one of the world's best figure skaters who gets wrapped up in this controversy when a rival skater mysteriously gets injured, leading authorities to speculate an organized hit by Tonya and her husband. Based on a true story, the film is awesome. Great performances here by Robbie, Allison Janney, Sebastian Stan, and the incredibly underrated Paul Walter Hauser. It's a biopic, but it feels unique. And I love how the story bounces around time periods and perspectives to keep the story energized and full of life. Margot Robbie is so good in this movie, and I like how different this role is. She's abrasive but driven. You feel for the way she's treated, but she doesn't always treat everyone else good. She's a great character because it feels like the movie doesn't really take a stance on what you should think about her. For every good quality they give you, some other harsh part of Tonya is revealed. All understandable though because of her childhood and extremely tough mother. Very rarely does Margot Robbie play characters like this that are as rough around the edges. Her performance so unique. One that takes you through a lot of emotions throughout the run of a film. You've all seen that one scene of her putting on the makeup, which is 10 out of 10 acting, first of all. But there's one more at the end I won't spoil where she's conveying so much heartache and desperation it's palpable. Easily my favorite performance of hers thus far. And after this film, she'd never really take a backseat again. Ladies and gentlemen, I can confidently say this film sparks the Margot Robbie renaissance. The Robbie-sance, if you will.
He'll put on a uniform and he'll go off to war, and I will be waiting again like I waited for you.
When I watched all of Andrew Garfield's movies, I always got excited when the elusive villain role popped up. And while I couldn't call Robbie's role in this one a villain, it's easily one of her least likable characters, which I like. The film follows the author of Winnie the Pooh and his real-life son, Christopher Robin, and how the family deals with a sudden boom in success following the book's publishing. The poor kid just wants to play and make people happy, but his parents push him around to different photo ops, public events, and even start giving away things like lunch with the real Christopher Robin. Domhnall Gleeson makes his second appearance in Robbie's filmography, this time the two playing Robin's parents. While Papa Gleeson is a little more hesitant in his son's celebrity, his wife seems to completely get lost in the sauce. I don't doubt she loves her son, but she has a lot less issue with him doing the meet and greets if it means more attention coming their way. She has some great acting moments, especially as the film goes on, and her chemistry with Domhnall is great. They're a great pairing, and it sucks this is the end of the road. They should do some more movies together. It's a pretty decent film too.
This is starting to get out of control.
No, this is perfect. Remember your training.
Wait, did we train for this?
He's back, ladies and gentlemen. Domhnall Gleeson, he's back. Honestly, Peter Rabbit is a pretty decent and harmless kids movie. If you're a child, you'll probably laugh at the funny rabbit, but for me, Domhnall Gleeson was the best part of this movie. He's so wacky in this one, I actually found myself laughing a few times just because of how absurd he gets. Once he just abandons all morals and actually starts to try and kill this rabbit by blowing James Corden up, I was like, okay, not bad. Margot Robbie plays the voice of Flopsy here, and she's good at what she's asked of, but I mean it's a cartoon rabbit. So kind of hard to compare this with her other roles, especially since it's her only really voiceover one. Still, it's a fun movie for kids and Donald fans alike, but if you're looking for a good Margot Robbie movie, there's a lot better options. Ones that we like see her and she's involved more. While Margot Robbie is great in this movie, the rest of it kind of struggled, in my opinion, to really entertain or pull off what I think it was trying to. The visual style is great and Simon Pegg is always a win, but unfortunately, I found this one to be a little bit messy. There are cool moments and the idea is solid, and again, Robbie's great, but honestly, I think this one's a skip.
To war with Scotland and betray my own clergy on a Catholic's behalf. No, I cannot.
Mary, Queen of the Scots feels like a Game of Thrones epic, but with a higher focus on the family drama rather than those action set pieces you might find Jon Snow in. There's a lot of talk of claims to the throne and my successor, you know, like arranged marriages and all that stuff, and this one's solid. I think you have to be at least a little bit into history, and if slower paced movies aren't your thing, this one might not hit either. Two play Mary of Scotland and Elizabeth of England, the film following their fight for power and the eventual downfall of both queens, but in their own respective ways. It is more of a rare antagonist role for Robbie, which acting-wise I really enjoy. Margot Robbie has a ton of range in her performances, but only a few times do we get to see her play some of those villainous characteristics. She's cold, ruthless, but also conveys a lot of varying emotions. You'll feel bad for her, you'll hate her, it's pretty good stuff. And it's a pretty unique performance in her whole filmography.
I'm gonna need that.
This is a holdup!
This is an interesting movie. The film is about a younger dude named Eugene who finds a wanted criminal in his barn who the entire town is looking for. He falls in love with her because said criminal looks like Margot Robbie, and she tells him a story that makes it seem like, wait a second, maybe her reputation's wrong. He wants to trust her, but he's not sure he can, so the drama ensues. It's a cool premise, and of course, Margot Robbie is great, and while the film isn't bad, unfortunately, it's not too memorable either. The cinematography is beautiful. It is one of the best looking films on today's list, and with two strong performances, there are things to enjoy in this movie for sure. I love the role for Margot Robbie because she gets to play some new angles we don't really see. I don't want to spoil the movie, but one of the better parts here is listening to Allison's story and deciding with Eugene if she's trustworthy or not. A solid film you could watch if it sounds entertaining, but if you skip it, you're not really missing out on much except for one of many great Margot Robbie performances. When it was first announced the three leads were going to be Margot Robbie with DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, directed by Tarantino, I was hyped, and it didn't disappoint. It's just such a fun movie. The characters are great, the sequences are memorable, and it gets better every single time I watch it. The film follows actor Rick Dalton and his stuntman Cliff Booth, who are both on their way out of Hollywood, while concurrently their neighbor Sharon Tate starts to rise. She definitely takes a backseat to Dalton and Booth in the story, but the moments we do get with her are light and they're just good vibes. It might be one of the movies Robbie actually doesn't say that much. She's great though in the role, and especially playing someone who actually existed, she does a great job of capturing who Sharon Tate was. I think, from what I've seen in her movies. I don't know her.
Fox is how we do church. You know when they made the corner logo turn? Because folks had Fox burned into their TV screens? That's us.
I actually remember seeing this one when it came out, and after rewatching it, it can confirm my feelings that this movie is pretty underrated. The film follows a group of women who work at Fox News and the different toxic situations they each have to deal with. Margot Robbie plays a young girl named Kayla trying to rise through the ranks of the business, but soon discovers it's actually a pretty messed up world. First off, the film can be pretty tough to watch at times, especially Kayla's story, because she deals with a lot of that, like, essay situations with her boss. There's one scene in this movie between Kayla and her boss, played by John Lithgow, which is maybe the hardest scene to watch of this whole filmography. It's awful, and I hated rewatching it, but damn, it's amazing acting. I mentioned it earlier in the video that a good actor, the best actors, have to be good at subtle acting, and this scene right here is about as good as it gets. She conveys so much hurt, embarrassment, and so many more emotions all without saying a word. One of her more underrated performances, in my opinion, even though she's only one of 3 main characters. The other performances are great too. Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman, as well as John Lithgow. Pretty good movie.
Okay, fine, so I hadn't told people about the breakup, but you don't understand.
Find me a new driver.
The good part of this movie is obviously Margot Robbie as Harley. I actually think it's the best she is as the character because, in my opinion, she's almost good enough to make this movie worth watching by herself. Unfortunately, there are a few other characters that don't work for me, and at times the movie can get a little boring. But rewatching this movie, I genuinely enjoyed it whenever Harley was on screen. When she left, though, maybe not. There's some cool action too sprinkled throughout, and Ewan McGregor is also having a ton of fun.
Yes, and I run on 2 legs now. It's classier.
This movie is a lot of the same with Peter Rabbit 1, but not as good for one main reason. Not as much Donald. Where is he? Where is he at? The movie foolishly decides to reduce the time with its best character, Thomas. And they also cut back on Peter's sisters, which includes Margot Robbie, and instead spends most of the time with Peter and this other rabbit named Barnabas. Not that much to talk about here as far as Margot Robbie, because it's a lot more of the same, animated rabbit. But in general, my thoughts are pretty much the same. It's a fun kids movie, pretty harmless, and Donald is the best part of the movie.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Had to go number 2.
Good to know.
Flag.
This film rules. I love this movie. It just feels right, you know, that Margot Robbie finally gets an awesome film as Harley. And it's kind of nice that there's more to compliment this movie on than just, well, Margot Robbie was really good. It's probably the film she has the least amount of screen time in as Harley, but the film makes great use of that time. I like how they make her feel really crazy, but in different ways from previous films. That whole sequence where she's killing people but just sees flowers instead of blood is awesome. I love that scene. It's her 3rd time playing the character, but she's still so much fun and so entertaining. The combo of a character like Harley and a performance like Robbie really is a match made in heaven. And while I'm sure Lady Gaga is gonna crush it in Joker 2, I really hope this isn't the last we see of Margot Robbie in this role. The rest of the movie is great also. The cast is good, the characters are good, and James Gunn does what he does best. He gives us a great film with lots of good comedy and even better character work and dramatic moments. Huge comfort movie, hell yeah.
Mr. Woodman, I believe I owe you my gratitude.
Amsterdam is a movie that kind of got swept up in the drama with the film's director, but if we separate art from artist, I think this movie isn't nearly as bad as people made it out to be. The film follows 3 best friends played by Margot Robbie, Christian Bale, and John David Washington. They're framed for murder. They gotta prove themselves innocent now and untangle this giant conspiracy that they get wrapped up in. The film can be a little hard to follow at times, I'll give you that. But because of a massive and talented cast, the scenes are enjoyable enough to get you through a pretty lengthy runtime. Margot Robbie brings a lot of heart to this role, a character with a lot of emotions, and a great relationship with Harold, played by David Washington. It's nice seeing her play a role like this after Harley Rabbit Harley. Just a great role with a lot of humor, kindness, and just fun. Great character, one of the film's best. Like I said, the movie's not perfect, but I did enjoy it. The cast, especially Christian Bale, is so good. I enjoyed my time with it. Not too sure if it warrants rewatches, but still a solid time.
Cut. Hiya. I'm Nellie Leroy.
Wow, this is a movie. Anyone who knows Damien Chazelle was obviously hyped for this movie. Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt being 2 of the stars is amazing reason to get hyped. I like this movie. There are a few moments in here that are complete magic. A few scenes at the end being some of my favorite in recent years. However, with a 3-hour runtime, there are a few dull moments that don't hit. And in my opinion, the film at times can get a little scattered. The film follows kind of a similar path to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You got 2 people on their way into the industry, and you got one on his way out. And that's, of course, the movie business. performance. The way it handles it, though, is very different from Once Upon a Time, mainly because the characters are very different, but still fun. Margot Robbie plays Nellie Leroy, an actress who we see her rise and ultimate fall out of grace, and I gotta say, Margot Robbie absolutely goes crazy in this role. One of her best performances. When we start the movie, she's so fun-loving and hopeful, full of ambition, but as she gets chewed up and spit out by this business, there are some really low moments for the character too. It's a highly demanding role and she crushes every second of it. I think the bad reception of this film kind of hurt a lot of the buzz, but Robbie was 1000% snubbed of Oscar recognition this year. It's fun, crazy, but also heartbreaking, and spins around to also be touching. I do think this movie gets a little too much hate because, like I said, there's a lot of gold here, but at times I think it just bit off a little more than it could chew. Still solid movie though.
I hope it comes out.
And I say, all my pictures come out.
This is gonna be a short one because Margot Robbie's got one scene in this movie. It's a good film, don't get me wrong. I'd still recommend it, but if you're going for a Margot Robbie movie, maybe don't get your hopes up. A good performance for what it is, and it has to be a good performance for the scene to work. If anything, it's credit to Robbie that she tries just as hard for her one scene role as she seems to for films she's the lead in. Or at least it seems like that. Maybe she's just that good of an actress. She's a very important character that ties everything together, and the scene's good too. The movie's about a small town that comes into contact with an alien and the ways they deal with that knowledge and the government trying to quarantine them. Good movie, it's hilarious, it's got a lot of fun, recommend it.
Or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
At last, we've come to the end of the road, and Barbie is indeed a banger of a movie. Huge Greta Gerwig fan, so when I found out she was linking up with Margot Robbie, I was hyped for this one as well. It's definitely one of the more comedy-based roles for Robbie, and she crushes it. No duh, I've said that 1,000 times now. She's hilarious in this film, but also shows so much heart, and there are some scenes that are quiet and sad and touching, and she's just as good in those ones. It's honestly amazing at this point to see Margot Robbie because it feels like there's nothing she can't do. The film follows Barbie and Ken as they go to the real world to stop Barbie from, like, malfunctioning. The movie just came out, so I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I like this one a lot. It's actually grown on me a lot thinking about it the last week. We're over 20 movies into this filmography, and Margot Robbie is still surprising me, and I'm still walking out of the theater saying, holy crap. Margot Robbie was amazing. Ryan Gosling is great, Greta Gerwig is great, and in general, this movie is just a lot of fun. Going into this filmography, I had previously only seen 11 movies, meaning I got 14 new performances and characters. As far as ranking her movies, I'd rank them like this. In 25th, I have Vigilante, followed by ICU, and then after that, I have The Legend of Tarzan and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. From there, I would go Terminal, followed by Peter Rabbit 2, and then Suicide Squad. In 18, I would have Birds of Prey, and it's really funny because these Harley Quinn performances are still amazing. In 17, I have The Sweet Francois, I think that's how you say it. In 16, I have Focus. In 15, I have Peter Rabbit, Long Live Donald. In 14, I have Dreamland, and in 13, I have Mary Queen of Scots. In 12th, I have Amsterdam. I think that might be a hot take, I'm not sure. And in 11th, I have Z for Zachariah. In 10th, I have Goodbye Christopher Robin, Long Live Donald. You know, one thing I will say, watching this whole filmography, I grew to love Donald. I didn't really see him before that much. Now I love the guy. After that, I have the very divisive Babylon. There's some really good stuff in there, though. In 8th, I have Barbie. In 7th, I have Asteroid City. In 6th, Bombshell. In 5th, Tonya. And in 4th, About Time. Number 3, I'm so glad she got a good movie as this character. I'm going The Suicide Squad. In number 2, I'm going Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And in number 1, The Wolf of Wall Street. But here's my ranking of her performances, and they are all over the place. In last, again, no shock, I have Vigilante and then ICU. After these, her performances are all solid. It's kind of just like screen time based, and some are just better than others, even though like all of them are good. After that, I have The Sweet Francoise. I'm saying that so wrong. After that, I have Peter Rabbit 2 because she's not in it that much, followed by Peter Rabbit 1 because she's in that more. After that, I have Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I wish she was in that more. And then I have The Legend of Tarzan, and then I have Focus. After that, I have Z for Zachariah. It's a fun film. She's good in that one. She was good in all of them, though. After that, I have Asteroid City. Again, she's phenomenal in her one scene. This next one might be a shocker, but I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Again, she's great in this movie. She's just not in it that much. She doesn't say that much. She's really good. She's really good. I love this movie. After that, I have Terminal. Again, this movie is way worse than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but she's in it a lot more. It asks a lot more of her. After that, I have Mary, Queen of Scots. It's a fun, different role for her. And then I have Dreamland. Again, she's the best part of this movie. After that, I have Amsterdam, followed by The Wolf of Wall Street. You might think Wolf of Wall Street is low, but you have to remember, this is her 4th film performance. After that, I have Suicide Squad, followed by The Suicide Squad. And then all 3 in a row, I have Birds of Prey. I think she's the best in this role as Harley. After that, I have Bombshell, and it's time for the top 3. In 3rd, I'm actually going with Barbie. I thought she was phenomenal in this movie. In 2, though, I have Babylon, and then in 1, I'm going Tonya. I feel like it's not a shocker, but it's true. She's great. After all these films, I was honestly blown away at how much range Margot Robbie has. It's something I don't think gets talked about nearly enough. If I had to analyze her career and give some final thoughts, these are kind of my speculations. Again, it's just me theorizing. In my opinion, once she got famous with Wolf of Wall Street, I don't think people knew she was as good as she was, and I still don't think she gets enough credit for that role. Maybe they were too distracted by Leo or something like that, because she wouldn't hit another big time movie until years later with Suicide Squad. The films in between, she brings in really good performances, but it's not until Harley Quinn she was given a really different role. And when she nailed that, I think it gave those early glimpses of how good she is at changing into a character, no matter what that character is like. Tonya is the role that showed she's legit insanely talented. And even though the films up until Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the films aren't the best of her career, she kept playing different roles with different range. And I think while the movies range from like meh to decent, this was an important time to show that range. Goodbye Christopher Robin, Mary Queen of the Scots, Dreamland, and even Terminal. All those roles are so different from each other, and they ask a lot of Margot Robbie, and she nails every single one with flying colors. I think we're in the golden age right now because people know she's good, they know she has range, and for the most part, the projects are getting better. Bombshell, The Suicide Squad, Babylon, Barbie. These films know how good Margot Robbie is, and when the directors challenge her to be different, but still bring that raw talent she has to a role, we're getting some of the best acting you can find in modern movies. Actors, actresses, everything. Be grateful you're around right now because she's crushing everything in sight. Watch some of these movies because we have one of the best actresses in the game right now at the top of her game. And she is giving us a full display of both her range and talent. Before you leave, I have another filmography video planned, but in order to justify it, please like and subscribe and do all that stuff. Share the video. I normally don't ask that much, but the Andrew Garfield one did not that good, and I really need these videos to do good to justify doing more. Also, I'm relaunching my Patreon with an extended version of this video already up. If you're a fan of the channel and all the different things I do, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff there to make it worth it for you and also help support the channel. Thanks a ton. I'm glad you exist. Margot Robbie's great.